I'm Zach Johnson, also known as the Millennial Farmer.
They didn't grow up around agriculture, they don't understand a lot about it, and now they can see it from an inside view.
The biggest thing I would hope to get across is just highlight the fact that farmers are people, and we are still...
Picture a guy standing in a machine shed in west central Minnesota, propping a phone against a dusty oil drum because he doesn't own a tripod. No script, no lighting, no plan beyond talking for a few minutes about what he's about to do in the field that day. That guy is now one of the most recognized farmers on the internet, with over 1 million people checking in on his life every single week. But the version of this story you've probably heard online skips almost everything that actually matters. It skips the years of frustration that pushed him to pick up that phone in the first place. It skips the woman who quietly turned a hobby into a real business while raising a family at the same time. And it skips the tragedy just down the road that changed what this whole project was even for. So let's actually slow down and talk about what happened to Zach Johnson, the man behind Millennial Farmer, because the real story is a lot more interesting than Farmer gets famous on YouTube. Before we get into it, it helps to understand just how ordinary this story starts. There's no dramatic origin moment, no lucky break, no discovery by a talent scout. It's a guy in his early 30s who was frustrated with how his profession was being talked about online and who happened to own a smartphone. That's it. That's the whole spark. Everything that follows grew out of that one small, almost boring decision, repeated consistently for years until it stopped being small. Zach Johnson grew up on a corn and soybean operation near the small town of Lowry, Minnesota, on land his family has worked for generations. This wasn't a hobby farm or a weekend property. It was a working operation, the kind where the calendar is dictated by planting windows and harvest deadlines, not by anyone's personal schedule. Zach eventually took on the operation alongside his father, and for most of his life, that partnership was simply what the future looked like. Wake up early, plan the day around the weather, keep equipment running, keep the crop moving, repeat that pattern for another season. Nobody in that world was thinking about subscriber counts or algorithms. Farming in western Minnesota is physical, repetitive, and largely invisible to the rest of the country. Most people who eat the food grown on farms like the Johnsons will never see how it actually gets from a field to a dinner table. That gap between what farmers do and what the public thinks farmers do had been growing for years, fueled by a constant stream of online arguments about pesticides, GMOs, and industrial agriculture. Farmers were frequently painted as indifferent to the environment or blind to the health effects of what they sprayed on their fields, even though those same farmers were drinking the same well water and raising their own kids on that same ground. Zach has talked about how that disconnect eventually became impossible to ignore. Instead of getting pulled into another argument in a comment section with someone who had never set foot on a farm, he decided to try something different. Just show people what actually happens, day by day, and let them draw their own conclusions. It's worth pausing on how counterintuitive that decision actually was at the time. In 2016, the loudest voices in the online farming versus consumer debate were arguing in absolutes, and a lot of farmers responded by disengaging entirely, choosing to just avoid the conversation altogether rather than wade into hostile territory. Zach took the opposite approach. Instead of retreating from the criticism, he decided to open the door wider than anyone was asking him to. If people wanted to know what actually happened on a farm, he was going to show them literally everything, the successes and the failures both, rather than curating a highlight reel designed to win an argument. That decision reflects something about how Zach approaches problems generally, which shows up again and again throughout this story. He doesn't seem to be the type to complain about a broken system without trying to build something in its place. Frustration with online misinformation turned into a